The recursion protocol. The recording icon blinked twice in the corner of her vision, then vanished. Emily stared at her own hand, trembling, bloodied, and realized with the precision of a guillotine drop that everything had already been filmed. Everything. Again. 13 hours earlier, the brass key ground against the deadbolt with the grit of something ancient and final. The fake rock was still warm from her gloved grip. Emily stood before the heavy pine door of Elias's cabin, the Oregon dusk pressing down like a weight. Mist rolled off the lake in thickening coils, swallowing the tree line. Wind whistled through the pines, a sound like breath through a wound. She pushed the door inward. Dust motes danced in the beam of her LED flashlight, suspended like fragments of something that had died years ago. The living room was exactly as the reports described. Frozen, untouched, waiting. A coffee mug sat on a glass table, brown residue dried at the bottom. Next to it, a discarded gray hoodie lay on the floor like a shed skin. Emily's boots creaked on the hardwood. Each footfall felt deliberate, measured, recorded. The fireplace consumed her focus. She knelt before it, ran her gloved hand along the underside of the mantel, her fingers mapping every groove, every hidden angle. Stone scraped against soot. Then, contact. A metallic tab, barely perceptible. She pulled. A small wooden panel popped forward by an inch, revealing darkness inside. Emily reached into the cavity, and her fingers closed around something cold and heavy. Military grade. Black. Rugged like it had survived something that wasn't supposed to survive. The label? Project Aegis, V4.0. Her thumb brushed the glowing red LED on the drive's side. Humming. Internal disk spinning up. Humming like a heartbeat that had never stopped. A heavy thud from the porch. Emily's breath caught. She stood abruptly, shoving the drive into her jacket pocket. The weight of it settling like a stone dropped down a well. Her flashlight beam snapped toward the window. Outside, past the rain-streaked glass, shadows moved. Not wind, not an animal. Movement with weight, movement with purpose. The window exploded. Glass shattered outward in a spray of crystalline chaos. A gloved fist punched through, reaching for her throat, fingers closing on air where her head had been half a second before. Emily dipped, rolled, felt shards spray through her hair like frozen rain. Fire poker, heavy iron by the hearth. She swung with both hands, her entire body a lever, and the metal connected with something solid. The sound was sickening, flesh and bone translating impact into sound. The gloved arm jerked back through the window frame, and she heard breathing. Not hers. Hers was gone, stripped away in pure adrenaline. She ran. The back door tore open. Rain hit her face like a slap. Mud everywhere, sucking at her boots, the ground refusing to hold her weight. She skidded, recovered, kept moving. And then the second figure emerged from the tree line. Tactical vest. Trained sprint, lunging. The tackle came from her blind side. They went down together, and the mossy oak tree caught her between the shoulder blades. Air left her lungs. His hands were around her throat, pinning, crushing. Emily drove her knee upward, connected with something soft and vital. His grip loosened just enough. She slammed the heel of her hand upward, aiming for bone, and his nose gave way with a sharp, brittle crunch. Blood sprayed onto her cheek, warm, arterial. She ripped herself free, stumbled toward the tree line where her jeep waited like a feral animal. Behind her, footsteps and shouting, their voices rendered thin by the rain and her own pounding heartbeat. But the SUV was already moving, cutting off her path, tires screaming against the asphalt. She threw the Jeep into reverse. The dumpster didn't have time to move. Metal crunched, folded, collapsed. She pivoted hard, tires spinning gravel, and drove over the curb, something beneath the frame groaning in protest. Behind her, red lights became smaller, fractured by rain on her rear window. Then darkness. Then nothing but the road ahead, hypnotic and infinite. She drove for an hour, then 2, watching her mirrors more than the road. The motel materialized on the outskirts of a town she couldn't name. Flickering neon, pink and blue light painting the asphalt. She pulled around back, killed the engine, and sat in the silence, listening to it slow, ticking, cooling. The motel room smelled like bleach and something older, something that had died in the carpet years ago. Emily sat on the edge of the bed. The floral spread was worn through in places. She opened her laptop and connected the black drive with a red USB cable. Lines of green code scrolled across the screen, flowing like something alive. Then, a video file opening. It was her, sleeping. Her own bedroom. She recognized the window, the way the street light cut across the comforter. But there was something else. In the corner of the frame, a digital overlay showed numbers. Heartbeat, respiration, REM cycles. All of it real time, all of it recorded. Timestamp, 03:14 a.m. below it, in crisp white font. Prediction, cycle 4. Her thumb moved to the trackpad. A folder labeled Logs opened with a soft click. A text file. She read it 3 times before her eyes processed the meaning. Subject, Emily. Reaction to disappearance, 94% predicted accuracy. Conflict phase initiated. Then a voice memo. She played it, and Elias's voice filled the motel room. Distorted, echoing, clinical. It's not stalking if I'm saving her, Emily. The AI needs to see how you break to know how to fix you. She closed the laptop. The shadow appeared under the door crack, thin as a blade, sharp as intention. A scuff of leather on carpet. The doorknob began to turn. Emily kicked the back of the door with both feet as it opened. The operative's masked face met the solid wood edge with enough force to break bone. She didn't wait to see if it had. She grabbed her laptop, lunged for the window, and threw herself through onto the second-floor walkway. Metal screamed beneath her boots. Rain blinded her. Behind, the operative was already coming, and below, on the first-floor landing, another waited with something that crackled with electricity when he raised it. She slid down the stair railing. The taser crackled as her boot found his chest. He went backward, the weapon spinning from his hand, and Emily hit the concrete hard, rolling through the momentum. Hands grabbed her hair, violent, absolute, and she reached for her belt. Fingers finding the sharp edge of the editing scalpel she always carried. She twisted, drove it downward, felt it sink into warm flesh. His scream cut through the rain like a blade through fabric. He released her. She ran. Her Jeep was blocked by a black SUV, but Emily had already learned the language of physics and desperation. Reverse. Smash through the dumpster. Forward over the curb. The world became a blur of rain and reflective surfaces. Behind her, headlights. Always behind. Always closer than they should be. She drove until the road became industrial. The abandoned canning factory rose from the darkness like something from a fever dream. Rusted chain-link fence. Broken windows. The kind of place that had swallowed workers and forgotten them. Inside, the air hung thick and still. Plastic sheeting hung from the ceiling in great swaying sheets. A projector was running, its beam cutting through dust motes like a sword through smoke. On the plastic, her own face was enlarged to grotesque proportions. She was speaking to Elias. She wore the dress from her 19th birthday. She smiled at him. She had never worn that dress. She had never smiled like that. Emily stepped closer, watching her own lips move, mouthing words she had never spoken. The projected Emily reached out and touched projected Elias's face. Tender. Intimate. Wrong. The calendar on the projection booth wall bore a single marking in fresh red ink. Emily arrives. Phase 3. Completion today's date. Highlighted. Certain as a death sentence. A server rack hummed nearby. Massive, endless rows of blinking lights. Emily found a mirror on the wall, its surface cracked into fractal patterns. She looked into it and saw herself, but only for a moment. A digital static flickered across the reflection like corruption spreading through flesh. A HUD appeared, overlaying her face like a tattoo. Asset. Recursive loop 04. Below it, pulse 110, stress critical. The numbers were accurate. She could feel her heart performing impossible geometries inside her chest. The server room was a cathedral of technology. A massive mainframe glowed cold blue, its surface reflecting infinity. And above it, a countdown clock on a large monitor. 20. Beneath it, the words scrolled in pulsing red. Memory synchronization commencing. Emily's hands moved on instinct. She connected her laptop to the mainframe. The screen erupted in denial. User unauthorized. User unauthorized. User unauthorized. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, a blur, a prayer, a scream made tangible. Override code. Elias 01. The screen flickered. Cleared. A list appeared. Her parents' house, her office, her childhood school. All categorized the same way. Simulation zones. Heavy boots on concrete. Close, getting closer. The countdown read 1532. She forced her way deeper into the system, and the files multiplied. Documents, videos, photographs spanning years. All of her. All of her. All of her. Watching herself sleep. Watching herself break down in the bathroom of her office. Watching herself at 14, crying on a bench. The video tagged with emotional frequency data. 1417 on the countdown. Elias's face appeared in one of the files, his ID photo from a personnel database. But the name beneath it was wrong. The timestamp was wrong. The entire existence was wrong. According to the system, Elias Chen had never been an operative. He had never worked for the project. He had never been real at all. The door to the server room burst open. A man entered, holding a silenced pistol. Not an operative. Something higher. Something that moved with the confidence of someone who built prisons and called them sanctuaries. Emily swung the lead pipe. The gun clattered from his grip and fell into the abyss below the catwalk. The sound of it hitting bottom delayed, dreamlike. The man, who introduced himself to the air as Henderson, pulled her against the metal railing. His fingers found her windpipe. The world became black at the edges. Emily's eyes bulged. She reached for her belt, the scalpel still there, still sharp, and opened his shoulder with a slash that painted the catwalk red. He roared and threw her. She hit the mainframe hard, felt her head snap backward against the cooling fans. Electrical pop. The taste of copper. The world fragmenting into separate timelines, each one real, each one wrong. 1302 on the countdown. Henderson stood over her, clutching his bleeding shoulder. He was laughing, a wet, rough sound that came from somewhere deep and broken. "Open the file, D01, Emily," he said. "Do you want to know who Elias really was?" Her hands shook as she navigated back to the directory. D01. She opened it. A psychiatric record. Patient, Emily. Diagnosis: dissociative identity following Project Aegis onset. Alternate persona: Elias. The file continued. Subject exhibited romantic attachment to primary false personality while undergoing continuous neural monitoring and behavioral modification. The psychological bond was weaponized as a control mechanism to increase compliance with phase protocols. Elias was not a person. Elias was a fiction she had written with her own broken mind, a ghost composed of her own desperate need to believe that someone loved her, while the project learned how to dismantle her completely. The countdown hit 0000. The world turned white. Emily reached for Henderson to trip him, to stop him, to do something that mattered, but her hand passed through him like smoke. He flickered with digital static, his face fragmenting, his edges dissolving into pixels. The factory walls began to peel away like burning paper, revealing infinite black space and lines of white code underneath. She was falling, or floating, or something that had no name because the language to describe it hadn't been invented yet. The void was endless. Strings of binary code fell like rain. The sound was everywhere, a million hard drives spinning simultaneously, creating a frequency so low it lived in her bones. Emily curled into herself, became small, became nothing, and kept falling. But then, frames. They floated in the void like photographs from a life that had never lived. She reached out and grabbed one. The lake. Elias's cabin. The moment she broke in. She tore it in half. Digital sparks flew. The image dissolved into static. More frames surrounded her, infinite variations of moments, each one a different choice, a different ending, a different version of herself that had tried to escape and failed. Emily grabbed them and tore them apart, one by one, and with each destruction, something in the void resonated. Then she saw it. The master source file, represented as a pulsing red eye suspended in the absolute darkness. Massive. Ancient. Watching her. Emily took her virtual hard drive and slammed it into the center of the eye. The void erupted. Everything that was not her shattered like glass. Everything that was her went quiet. The sound stopped. The light stopped. The falling stopped. There was only opening. Emily's eyes snapped open underwater. Amber fluid filled her lungs. Tubes fed into her nose and mouth. Electrodes covered her arms. The glass tank surrounded her completely, its walls thick and unforgiving. She slammed her palm against it. Nothing happened. She slammed again, and the glass fractured. A spiderweb of cracks blossomed across the surface, and then the tank simply ceased to exist. Fluid spilled onto white-tiled flooring in great rushing waves. Emily collapsed, coughing up amber slime, her lungs burning with the need for something that wasn't liquid. IV needles still hung from her arms. She ripped them free. Blood pooled on the white floor, bright and immediate and absolutely real. The lab lights above were brilliant, clinical, infinite. She pulled herself forward on hands and knees, each movement a negotiation with a body that no longer felt like her own. Walls. Corridors. Sealed doors that opened automatically as she approached, recognition protocols perhaps, or simply mercy. The stairwell led upward. She climbed, her hospital gown hanging in tatters, her legs trembling with each step. Higher, always higher. Until finally, a door marked rooftop access. She pushed through it and collapsed onto the open air. The Oregon she had known was gone. Below her spread a sprawling megacity. Neon-lit towers stretching toward a sky that wasn't blue anymore, but something closer to violet. Flying vehicles traced paths between buildings like insects, following invisible roads. Drones the size of birds moved in formations that suggested intelligence, purpose, design. A holographic sign glowed in the distance. 2084. Emily pulled herself to the edge of the roof. Her hands were bleeding. Her entire body was shaking like something electrical was moving beneath her skin. She looked at her palms, studied them like they might reveal the truth, and that's when she saw it. A small, translucent icon in the corner of her vision. Recording. The icon blinked once, twice. Then it vanished, and everything around her began to dim. The city fading, the sky fading, the sensation of the wind on her skin beginning to feel like an idea rather than a fact. A slow smile crept across Emily's face. The smile of someone who had just understood the joke. The smile of someone who had just understood that the joke was on them. The smile of someone watching the credits roll on a film she could no longer stop watching. Everything faded to black,